Boa tarde. Sejam muito bem-vindos à Casa do
Good
Seguro.
afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the House of Insurance, a strategic hub full of contact, entrepreneur connections, and businesses, created to promote the role of the insurance sector towards climate transition. My name is Maria Villanova, and on behalf of CNseg, I would like to thank you all for being here. Well, now I would like to start the forum of Insurance and Agribusiness at COP30, hosted by CNseg, FGV Agro, and ABAG, or Brazilian Agribusiness Association. The goal of this panel is to discuss the role of the insurance sector in protecting national agricultural production, given the risks posed by the increasing severity and intensity of extreme weather events. I'd like to remind all of you that all the sessions are being simultaneously translated. You can get the headset at the entrance of the room. Feel free to get them before we begin. The complete agenda for House of Insurance at COP30 can be found on the website casadoseguro.org.br or by scanning the QR code that you see on the screen right now. Now, to kickstart our afternoon agenda, I'd like to start to the stage Diogo Oliveira, President of CNseg. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm here, but I know that it wasn't on the agenda, so sorry, but I wrote something regardless to say in order to welcome this amazing panel that you will have right now, in which we'll have Ministry Roberto Rodrigues, a person that I'm sure you all know, and a brilliant person, and I'd like to thank him on behalf of Brazilian agribusiness and the entire country, because the work that he has been doing on developing the Brazilian agribusiness sector is simply amazing, both during his time in the government and outside of it. So I really wanted to give him and you, Minister, our special thanks for being a House of Insurance today. Now, above everything else, he created the subsidy program for agricultural businesses, which we will be talking about here today a little bit, that every day becomes a bit more important. I have been talking about this quite a lot, about the shift in perspective of the agribusiness in terms of challenges. Brazilian agribusiness has always had a problem with financing. Ever since we started the coffee cycle production, the problem was the funding and financing for the harvesters. And we created Banco do Brasil for one of those specifically reasons, right, for helping finance. And after that, our Ministry Rui Barbosa, in his eagerness to resolve the issue, he created a bunch of different financial programs that unfortunately didn't work so well for the rest of the country. But the idea was just to help solve the issue with funding for the agricultural sector. Things moved along very well. Today, I don't think that we have an issue like that anymore. But the problem is the interest rates that we still have. But again, that's more of a problem with the rest of the country. We have access to credit now, private credit, public credit, funds. Everything that we have right now works and works very well. But the problem, the biggest issue and risk for the Brazilian producer was always the climate. And the climate is something that is getting worse and worse because of climate change and everything else that we have seen. So the biggest issue that we have in the Brazilian agribusiness sector is that it needs to be solved or tried to solve is precisely the management risks. And I'm sure that with the rural insurance, it's not going to be It's not going to solve everything, but it could be one of the tools, one of the important tools to face this risk problem. Here at COP30, we have launched the report that we call Climate Events Radar in Brazil, in which it tried to estimate the impact of climate events in Brazil. From 2019 to 2024, Brazil had 4,500 climate events per year. Floods, hurricanes, droughts per year. In the past 3 years, the total impact in the Brazilian economy was 200 billion reais caused by those extreme weather events. More than half of that will affected the agribusiness. Around 35 billion reais per year in loss in the Brazilian agribusiness was caused by climate and weather events, especially drought. And despite this whole scenario, the participation in the rural sector, the rural insurance has been going down in Brazilian agriculture. We used to have 16% of planted area insured, and this year we're going to less than 3% of insured areas, planted areas, and all of this was due to the decline of the program that that the minister had built. Today we have 500 billions in subsidy, 50% of the budget, which is already low investment, and 50% of that was blocked by the government. Now we are aware of the budget financial issues of the federal government, but it's not only about budget restrictions, it's about priority. We're talking about a 2 trillion budget. So the priorities need to be first, they need to come first. And I think the Brazilian agribusiness sector needs to repeat and talk about the priority of that investments in this agenda, because the result of the lack of agribusiness industry investment is because we are losing rural producers. Every time he loses his crops, his harvest, he will try to renegotiate his debt. And when he does that, that will increase the indebtedness of that producer, because he's basically piling up payables. Next year, if he needs to do that, he will continue to pile up future debts with things that he already financed in the past. And on the other hand, for the financial treasury, the cost of all those negotiations, because part of the negotiations is taken by the treasury. So it's more expensive for the country, it's worse for the rural producer, what we have seen in Brazil, especially in terms of rural insurance. That's why I'm really happy, really happy to have this type of discussion here this afternoon at the House of Insurance. I'd like to thank all of our partners in helping us host this event, especially ABAG and FGV Agro. And of course, I'd like to thank all our panelists, our top tier panelists, and I'm sure this will be one of the best panels that we will have seen at COP. So thank you all for being here. I wish you all a great afternoon. Hope you have a great discussion. Hopefully we can leave here having some solutions for the problems that we have. Thank you.
Muito obrigada, presidente.
Thank you so much, President. Now, moving on, to start the panel, we would like to talk about the strategic role of agriculture insurance in the face of global climate emergency. The coordinator of the Agribusiness Center FGV ESP, Roberto Rodrigues. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. The coordinator is Guilherme Bastos, so I'm a former coordinator. I'm a former ministry, a former secretary, former a lot of things, a former husband. I hate that word, but anyway, here we are. Despite all of that, with all that being said, I'd like to thank all of you for having me here, and thank you for the introduction that you gave me. And to try to be really clear and concise, I'll keep it short. This COP that we're having right now has a very important role to play in Brazilian agribusiness. Former COPs dealt with, with agriculture with something more to the sidelines, not that as important as it should be. But this COP right here has allowed Brazil to show the rest of the world something that we already knew very well about it, but the rest of the world didn't. That the tropical sector of the world agribusiness will be responsible for the four pillars of the modern world. I've been talking a lot about this. Today, the world has been crossed by four modern horsemen of apocalypse, which food insecurity, just energy transition, social inequality, and the climate issue. These four topics, I'm sure, will be solved by the tropical agribusiness of the world. Why tropical? Because the key to tropical agriculture happened as Brazil is starting to occupy a more key position in the world. So that was very clear for us. So I have no doubt whatsoever. And when I was invited, by the way, to work at this COP, I wasn't very sure at first because I didn't believe in having these broader discussions and all of that. But I think that I always thought that the results of the discussion was never implemented. And he told me that no, he wanted to implement the solutions from this COP, from previous ones. And I'm sure that agriculture has a very important role in this. And once he told me that, I agreed to come. And I looked for IPA, the Institute IPA, that has a lot of associates connected to it. And I asked IPA to talk to all the associates so they could send their ideas on what to propose to copy, considering that Brazil would be a global influencer in tropical agriculture. And we got dozens and dozens of documents of the highest level. The first one I got was from ABAG, and we received over 50 documents. A lot of those documents had their own particularities, so we needed to find a way to work with all of them. To do that, I hired an amazing scientist that I knew to get all those documents and try to harmonize all of them so we can get something more uniform. And with her and a lot of people helping her, like Edu, Rodrigo, and my team from SGV, Guilherme, Camila, a lot of people worked in this process, and we ended up having two parts. First is the story of the Brazilian agribusiness in 50 years. But 50 years ago, we used to import 30% of the food that we consumed in the country. It was during the military regime, and it's insane a country like ours needed to import that much food. And slowly, all of that changed as we started to occupy different areas in Brazil and all of that. And the growth was paramount. Can you imagine after 50 years of importing 30% of what he consumed to ended up exporting to other countries? It's truly a unmatched, unparalleled growth that Brazil has done. And the story is told, and she mentioned a lot of numbers in terms of jobs generated, production. All of that was part of that side of the document. And the second part of what we made was a set of proposals that we are sending from the agribusiness sector that could maybe transform our current model into a more tropical model, relating to the sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, because this is the swath of the globe that has land to grow. And Brazil can do that and can do that very efficiently. Of course, each country has their own climate, their own government, institutions. The idea is not to exactly copy and paste, but the model could be replicated, and that is being proposed in the document that we have had as well. So I definitely see a very positive horizon in Brazilian agro after this COP here, because the green zone that you went to visit is basically a garden, a tropical garden that we are showing the world. I was there this morning with Embrapa's team. I haven't met a single person who visited that who wasn't completely blown away by what we did. So the scenario is has definitely given an upgrade in Brazilian tropical agriculture to the world. So now it's up to us to advance and move forward as a planet with a sustainable tropical hub of agricultural technologies. Now, there are a couple of things behind all of these things. First, financing. Without funding, any country can make a project like ours happen in short term. And the second thing is trading, global trading. Even a poor country or smaller country, if they could produce, they're not going to be able to reach the market. So those are two key aspects. So our tropical model could be replicated in the future. Now, with all this being said, we are now definitely in front of a very favorable scenario. But through that document that was produced, there's also another thing there that is important because we aren't done yet. All those topics, food security, carbon, all of that, regenerative agriculture, all of that is a process that is still moving forward. First, the agro techniques that are being applied are not enough. We still have bioinputs, AI agriculture, the subjects that the Ministry of Agriculture have been talking more and more about, which is the recovery of degraded areas. So there's a lot of things that we still need to solve here in the country. What we have done is good, but it isn't enough yet. We still have a lot to cover. And in order to do all of that, we need a strategy. People have been asking, what's essential for Brazil? There's no one thing. It's about strategy. Having a strategy. Thank you. This is it. This is the document I was talking about. This is the executive briefing, and you really should read this because it's the history of the Brazilian agribusiness and the proposals that we created. And I think there's a QR code. Is it here? It's in the rural channel. If you want to check out the rural channel, that would be great. It's in Portuguese and English. You guys are able to read it. So going back to strategy, that strategy needs to cover a lot of things. First, logistics. Brazil, until 50s and 60s, we were much more of a coastal country. All the capitals were located near the coast. Florianópolis, Curitiba, São Paulo, Rio. And as we started moving inwards towards the Brazilian Cerrado and being able to go deeper into other territories in the country, this has opened new areas. It almost felt like a occupation of the West, like it happened in the US, right? But here, it was different. The way we did that was basically just to explore other areas of the country. And what they did here in the country by exploring the west part of our country and the deeper parts of the countries was something that was extremely brilliant. And this should be talked more about it. We haven't seen one Brazilian sort of Western story or movie that have talked about this. Of course, they didn't face wars, nothing like that, but we face many diseases, many harsh conditions, and that story should be told. So logistics and strategy should be told. Then we have trade agreements. because that helps everyone, helps business. We need market. We need market if we want to double the business. Because abundance is better than scarcity. Scarcity is something that can be easily overcome. But when we have that abundance, that's an issue because we used to have 5 million bags of that we produced. And we had that in stock that couldn't be moved. That was weighing heavily on the market. So we were able to read out all of that, and coffee spiked and grew its price double in 6 months. So, logistics structure, commercial agreements, and sustainability, technology for the process. Fourth, organization, cooperativism, and all of that. And fifth, a local income policy. Brazil is the only agribusiness leader in the world that doesn't have that doesn't provide good stability for the rural producers. So agriculture, although has its many risks as it have, like climate, everything depends on the climate for them, of course. So I consider that it's absolutely paramount for the process of growth that allows Brazil to get its tropical models to the rest of the world to have a good income policy for the producers. We have a sort of 4 ways for this, in which the main axis is the real sector for the country's business. The reason for that is that first, non-insurer will offer rural insurance that has no technology. So insurance is basically a reference, so the technological bar raises, thus improving the rest of the country. Everybody wins with it. Secondly, the private bank doesn't need to fund it because he has its own financial tools to deal with it. So all of that alleviates the public banks and ends up creating a safeguard. Thirdly, the rural insurance is indeed the only stability scenario that we have. In 2003, the first thing that I did was the rural insurance. The second was the insurance for the agribusiness, because the idea was to unload the burden from the government and try to privatize some of the process around it. So the rural insurance and the agribusiness insurance and all of that, LCAs, will be able to give a safeguard for investments that was regardless of the government's aid. And today, like I was saying, we need a sort of a baseline for pricing. So those types of insurances was something that I worked at. We tried to help the government to grow more and more. So again, the overall idea was for the private sector to assume more and more the expenses. And the rural insurance created 22 years ago was only 10% responsible for what we had. I've been talking a lot about that, and I've been trying to bring insurance companies from other countries even for them to show us what they're doing abroad, so we can try to exchange a little bit of ideas and bring more enthusiasm towards rural insurance. So I think, Diogo, that the floods that we had last year in Rio Grande do Sul was able to open our eyes for the situation that we have, because a climate extreme events that happens ends up breaking everyone. We're able to pay for the rural producer, all the small businesses suffer, everybody suffers, and the insurance can solve all of those issues. So it's really silly for a government not to invest in its rural insurances. Because when we have an issue like that, an extreme event like that, it's the government, the Brazilian government, that ends up assuming and covering much of those risks. So it's cheaper for everyone if we have those assets insured. So I think we're slowly moving towards that. Uh, it's very slow, but we're moving forward, and we will reach a good place in the future. And again, it's not only about climate; it's about market, generated income, and I think we are moving towards that with parametric insurance, with other people working around that. I think, again, we are walking towards the process that, again, still at a slow pace, but we're moving slow and steady. And the help of the cooperatives, we have been doing more and more. Technology is important for those who have it, right? If you don't have it, you end up perishing. Your business won't grow. So it's important to us to foster technology more and more in the collective process. So before I continue, I must say that I truly believe that rural insurance will be paramount for the future of Brazil. I used to be a producer a long time ago. When we plant something, we think and we hope that we'll have the perfect weather, the perfect climate to grow that, and then the plant will grow healthy, the soil will be great, and everything will be great. All the bio environment will work perfectly, and we'll produce, and then we have to pay the bank and then pay the for logistics. So it's hard. To be a producer in Brazil is an act of faith in itself. And I think insurance is at the core of everything. And I believe and I trust that we'll be evolving towards a time in which insurance will become baseline for credit. Because when you do that, you are covering the essential parts of a business. Now, there's one last thing that it's important to discuss, that is irrigation, which is a technical aspect of it. We need irrigation to grow more in Brazil with less bureaucracy and to be better, fostered, and talked about because it's an important part of the rural environment and producers. Yesterday, by the way, I went to an event about energy and agribusiness, and one of the speakers, a brilliant person, said, let's talk about agro energy from beginning to end, from start to finish. And I told him, maybe you should talk about something else. When you talk about and use that word and, that scares me a little bit. But let's use maybe the word life cycle or something else, because I'm sure that we'll be here with you and we'll be experiencing that brilliant future ahead, having the Brazilian agro-tropical being implemented and helping that large tropical swath in the planet, thus helping the entire world to produce food, helping the world produce clean energy, reducing social inequality for the rest of the world, and taking care of the climate and helping the world to take care of the climate, thus killing those dreaded four horsemen. And then created the only condition for universal peace. It's impossible to have peace with hunger, with food insecurity. We need harmony and union. So I leave here COP with hope. From the time that I have left, to be able to see the peace being achieved in the world, and insurance is paramount to that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Roberto, for your words. And the next topic, insurance as an instrument for protecting agricultural production in the context of the climate transition, challenges in Brazil and good international practices. This panel will discuss the strategic role of agricultural insurance in mitigating risk from the impacts of the climate transition. So, the main challenges faced by Brazil in expanding coverage and accessing protection instruments will be discussed, as well as successful international experiences that can inspire the development of more effective and sustainable solutions for the sector. I invite to the stage Renato Buranello, Vice President of ABAG. Rafael Marani, Director of Agribusiness, Allianz Seguros. Pedro Loyola, Coordinator, FGV Agro OSR. Paulo Ora, Executive Superintendent for Rural and Reinsurance, Brasil Seg. Eduardo Brito Bastos, Director of ABAG. ABAG. And Esteves Cronado, Director of Institutional Relations, CNseg. You have the floor. Thank you very much to everyone here. I will try to draw attention of a topic that has been already talked about because it's quite difficult to complement based on what has already been said. Now, as already mentioned, Brazil has a beneficial dependency on the agribusiness that is very important. Our fourth or fifth percent of GDP is now agribusiness. If you look to the Brazilian states that have grown in the last 10 years, you'll have Mato Grosso, Mato Grosso do Sul, Goiás, Tocantins, Rondônia, I believe. These are the states that grew and has grown the most. And I think the sixth one then, Itaí. Well, these are the states very much in function of the agribusiness. We have a dependency on GDP, entry of foreign resources because of the agribusiness, because our trade balance is strong, and everything that grows is got to do with agribusiness. As mentioned previously, it is quite a paradox. A country that is a provider for food for the world, if you look at the important instrument for risk mitigation, we see there is a decrease. Thinking of PSR, we have already reached 14, 15% of the planted area 2 years ago, and it dropped to 7, and this year most probably 5. It is crazy to imagine that a country that is such a agricultural power has only 3, 4, 5, 6 of the planted area covered. In a moment where the climate has become quite frail. So how can you keep yourself in this profession of faith of which you depend so much? This is indeed a challenge, how to think and rethink the use of this instrument and how we go towards in the sense that it has a lower gap and more resilient and trustworthy in the sense that I can plan my investments and my policies that based on the existing public policies. And I'll draw your attention to use this in your sentences or in your presentations that now we have seen that in this for the first time, the Banco do Brasil has launched saying that according to what both ministers mentioned, how to integrate credit policy to the insurance policies. So the central bank gave a very important step, but it's needs. We have a set of insurance, and despite this one, now considering the easy questions, I'll begin with Eduardo. Considering the global competitiveness, sustainability that IAGI promotes, how do you see the relation of climate goals, competitiveness, and increasing population? Is it possible to grow and reduce emissions? If yes, how? Yes, it is possible. And I firstly like to thank, actually, it was you when you called me and we already said, let's go together. And then FGV, university, and I'm very pleased that things worked out and it was a real goal, so to say, and I'm sure we will do much more. So now, what is interesting in this throughout these 2 weeks of COP30, this is my last event. It would be in the blue zone, but unfortunately, it is closed now. But between pre-COP and this one, this is the 31st presentation. Now, and I learned a lot because one of the topics was about agriculture. It has out of 10 people, 4 people work in the agricultural sector. So this by itself talks about the importance of the topic. So 10%, 4% of the investment is in agriculture. So there is a huge gap. Now, considering the future, the world consumes 2.1 billion tons of grain. So there is a projection for 3,900,000,000 tons more. The average productivity of the planet Earth that was closed June this year is 5 million tons. So the corn and soybeans and other grains, they represent 180 million hectares that we need additionally to feed the world. Does this anybody know how much area this would be? Do you think that Pará is a big state? Pará is the second largest state in Brazil. It has 120 million hectares. So anybody from the state of Minas here? Thank you, thank you. Minas, the state has 80. So it would be the state of Pará and the state of Minas together that we have to knock down to. Then plant food, 300 tons per hectare, 554 giga in terms of emission. How much did the planet emit? 60. So to feed the world, now let's do the math to see the size of the challenge. To feed the human population 2050, we must knock down the equivalent of one emission close to the planet today. It's obviously that it's not going to be supported by the planet Earth. So what will we have to do? We'll have to do things in another way. This productivity must go from 5 to 10, and it is possible to do so, but this will demand a lot of effort. And we can use the recovery of degraded land. So I explained the size of the challenge and how. So it goes to the fact that we have to embrace this restoration of degraded area that is born in Brazil. Now we call Caminhos Verde. Yesterday we launched Height, which is the global equivalent, which is a project of $400 billion to recover degraded areas. In Brazil, we need 60 in a world that is asking for 300. So what we're asking for in terms of resources is not that big to help to feed the world. Obviously, the world will need much more other things, but I have a bias here, but I always say that my bias is not because of the fact that I'm an agronomist or work in the sector, but this morning I had breakfast, today I had lunch, and I will have dinner. And the fact that I am able to eat, we understand that this would be the number one priority, and will only happen if we are together with the environmental agenda, or productivity should go from 5 to 10, and but if it drops from 3, then it's going to be very bad. But whatever, considering this, it is possible to win. Okay. Well, considering what was mentioned, drawing your attention here to how PSR is reducing, we see that there is a huge concentration in the rural insurance, especially in the south of Brazil. The insurance is losing its capacity of mutualism. Now, how do you see the role of technology to broaden efficiency and reduce the cost of agricultural insurance in Brazil so that we can leave this prison in the states of the south? And how can we price the risk, the climate risk better and improve the sector? Well, thank you for your question. To be and also, it's a pleasure to be here in this panel with my colleagues. And how do I see this? Well, I've been in this market for quite a while, and I'm a veterinarian, and I think I'm more an agronomist than a veterinarian. So much have I discussed agricultural insurance. So I see that this aspect of technology, for example, when agricultural insurance started in the subvention of the rural insurance, it was still in its infancy to discuss the rules and this program. But we went into the sector to build a market in an insurance mode. So as a vet, I have never discussed risk management and so on in the university, at the university. So today, this insurance mode is very transversal because it surpasses many disciplines. So we got to train and bring professionals from several verticals of knowledge, like agronomists, forest engineers, environmental engineers, and so on, and mechanical, electric, and process and food engineering professionals. So they started, these professionals started seeing in the insurance a source of knowledge with respect to scientific knowledge. And so the rural insurance has disciplines that helps us to place these products in the marketplace. So if now training people and bringing them from several systems within this market, in 2006, 7, and 8, we did not have specialists in the field that could apply a methodology to assess the losses for the insurance company. So these professionals were trained in the field. They built this knowledge with respect to losses. And technology was much designed for those areas that were more well known, which they assessed life insurance and other kinds of insurance companies. But rural insurance, something where you have to design systems and processes that are very specific to serve these specificity. And what the market has been doing, especially in the last 5 years, has actually accelerated a lot, is the movement of three large technology verticals. The first one would be the development of systems and processes to serve the need of contingency in the agricultural insurance. When you have a drought in a region, it's not only two or three that then uh, um, report claims. You have 20,000 claims in 10, 15 days. So there is a huge demand for assessment of these claims. So we know that the insurance sector advanced a lot in this. They bought also the geotechnology to check if the crop that was planted was exactly the one that should be. There there is a monitoring of the area which is continually and systematically done when there is a claim and the specialist can then assess it. So geotechnology advanced significantly and helps giving more precision. And the second vertical is the risk modeling, where the insurance have worked in capturing the data, especially climate, soil, and management, to price and assess the risk in a more qualified format, so you can inform this to your end class client. And the third one would be product development, and you need technology for this. Today we operate with plus 40 cultures, and the market actually works with 70 plus, thinking more specifically. Now we have advanced a lot in livestock, and then discuss with paramedics how can we arrange the coverage, and there is a design of product so that we can be prepared to serve this demand. Pedro Loyola from FGV, the best intelligence center here. Now, the market has this capacity to already developing this technology, but the observatory of oral insurance shows that there are challenges to broaden the coverage, make the producers more resilient to extreme events. According to your point of view, what are the adjustments in terms of product, considering what was already mentioned, and risk management practice or public policies that would be more efficient so that rural insurance is not complementary but becomes a strategic tool for risk management for the Brazilian growers, farmers? Thank you very much. Uh, for all the participants here. I'd like to thank CNseg, FGV, and all the organizers of COP30. And in this beautiful house of insurance, congratulations for that. And I'm going to start first talking about products. So when we look to the rural insurance in Brazil, the penetration is very in the center-south region, and sometimes the center-west, north, and northeastern growers or producers have difficulty in looking to the traditional insurance as a risk mitigator. So now the first thing, according to FGV Agro, is that there is no silver bullet. Obviously, we hear a lot about parametric insurance. How does it work? So it works in foreign countries, and small growers or farmers or producers that have half a hectare up to 4. We have something similar in Brazil, which is called Fundo Garantia Safra. It's a semi-parametric insurance that works, is in application in Northeast, north of Minas, Amazonas, because the other areas is extreme drought where you have 3 index parameters that are parametrics, and also field assessment, field individual that assesses the field. And it is a program for those farmers that are not commercial farmers. So in these countries like Mexico, India, Colombia, this insurance works very well, the parametric for this public, small growers. And we have a public, of course, that could be served by parametric insurance. And in states like Rio Grande do Sul, São Paulo, Paraná, Bahia, so these states have a higher frequency with respect to climate issues and has in their structure producers of this size and with difficulty of access to financial instruments. So when we look to the issue with respect to center-west region of large producers, we already have products for specifically for this grower, this producer, which is got to do with the range of productivity. The Center-West producers said, I'm not going to lose then more than 40-50% of my crop, my production. Doesn't make sense of hiring a traditional insurance. This is in fact true for them. So you have a product that covers part. It won't cover the catastrophe, but suppose it is 45%, this insurance will not cover, and also the premium, which depending on the insurance company and the region. So this insurance is already available for the growers, the farmers. It doesn't get there because of lack of information, but lack of subsidies. So these are large producers, and this has not yet been disseminated or distributed in the country. The parametric one can be used for large producers, provided it has 4 indicators, which are the main ones for parametric insurance, which are common in a parametric insurance, which is drought or excessive rain, high temperature or low temperature in the case of snow and so on. So having only these named risks. So it doesn't go into, the parametric doesn't go into multi-risk, which is very difficult, because if there is a fire, it will not cover. If they have hail, unless you have radar system, it can be complemented. But the parametric insurance is a complementary solution for the traditional insurance, can be developed in the country, can be complementary for specific states, but it is not a silver bullet. We have to develop other insurance, understand a little bit more about the demand of the producer, and see if the insurance available does not serve him, and talking a little bit about public policies, the resources to attract high technology producers. And now I'm going to the second point of my talk, which is risk management. This goes from the producer to the insurance company, because for the producer, we took part of a panel yesterday with Paulo Ora, Maurílio, which is and Guilherme Bastos as well. And we are talking about this, that the level of management is a product for insurance. It is a reality. So this is a practice of risk management that the producer should adapt to receive more subvention. And so that makes sense for the bank and credit cooperative, because that has a more structured soil, he's more resilient to the climate. And Embrapa research shows that the producer that had drought during 21-22 and made management level 1, applied the management level 1, he didn't know management. And the level 3, which is more structured, this producer that invested more in the soil resiliency, and he did his risk management, he had 55 to 83% more in terms of productivity. So most probably in many regions, this producer will not even call the insurance, or is not worried with a default and so on. The practice of risk management for the producer, we have regenerative agriculture as well. So I believe that here the public policy should induce the producer to have credit with lower interest rates for those that really do practice risk management, take care of the soil, take care of the environment. We already mentioned that. We were talking about this while Guilherme Bassi was the director of rural insurance. I think we implemented, if I'm not mistaken, many products. That is the one suggested by Leila. So there could be more subvention for the producer that had the ABC funding. So the government has a huge role of fostering or inducing the market that takes this rural insurance to other regions. Now, regarding risk management of insurance companies, we have, and it is actually the role of FGV Agro and Rural Insurance. of our role is to train professionals with certification. We have a huge gap in terms of knowledge, be it from the sales assistant, those that work in bank, credit cooperatives, production, and resale of raw material. There's a lot of people giving consultancy advices, what you not have in the financial market with a certification. So Goretti is here, who is director of the innovation and insurance and reinsurance sector. That is part of what we're doing at the observatory so that we can reach this training for this whole rural market, insurance for rural market. And also this field specialist, we have a network of specialists have to be trained and have and get their certification. That's going to be a constant process. And also for those who work in insurance and reinsurance. I worked in insurance for 2.5 years. I worked in the bank, in the government. So I haven't been an agent yet, but when I worked at the insurance company, the problem is to hire, you, there are no professionals in this area. We have to train these professionals. And with this, I believe that I will then talk a little bit about public policy. Thank you very much. Rafael, along the same lines, now regarding the insurance company, we have large bottlenecks, is a low bottlenecks and is low cooperation. We're talking about 90% of Brazil here. So no insurance product has such penetration in our country. I think automotive sector is higher, but doesn't reach it. So this scenario is reflected in the rural scenario. And according to your point of view, how to simplify the process of hiring and also regulating. So obviously parametrics can be a way of regulating things easier to make the insurance more accessible, foreseeable, and effective. Could you give me a point of view regarding for small and medium-sized producers and also for the large producer, which is the center west of Brazil? Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here with you with such high-level professionals. So I'm going to talk about a topic which is essential for Brazil, which is agriculture insurance, and also contribute to the resilience of the rural producer when we're talking about climate coverage. So according to my point of view, insurance, it needs products that has to be more adequate to the producers. So the producers must understand how many bags he produced, but sometimes we need products that serves the individualism of such producers. So it's usually they work in terms of municipality, and we have to understand that we need a more personalized insurance so that we can look to the risk and price it as well and give the adequate coverage. This is initial point to serve the other regions better. So the company here works with coverage that also sees climate services in different regions, cultures, and crops, offering an exclusive coverage for each customer. This is our main goal. So now a second aspect besides this is the customer experience, which is more important when we have this hiring. It's got to be something more simplified. If you ask for more information, this hurts the process. So the digitalization, hiring, simplified hiring process with people that have the information already prepared to bring this client closer. Now, as Pedro mentioned, the Viagra, we have to train people, which is important according to our point of view. Now, besides simplified hiring, when there is an accident, it's got to be fast and easy. So the insurance company must have a process prepared to serve large volumes. We've seen many catastrophes, and a few days ago, November October 1st, there was heavy rains in the state of Paraná that affected 40 cities. In a single day, we received about more than 40 claims. So, and the other insurance company probably received equally the same. So we got to be prepared, we've got to work fast, we've got to have adequate product and well-defined processes, and the parametric insurance that is complementary can help in this process. Now, I also see that the public sector has an essential role. We from the private sector have our function to develop product and serve our clients very well, and also have fast and speedy processes. But now we need, for the government, we need subvention policies that gives us the opportunity or the opportunity of the real producer access, because it also makes cost become lower and makes and fosters them to start having insurance. And also we got to check the calendar between the crop for the different regions. We need this calendar so we can have foreseeability. The insurance company must have will have more foreseeability, and the insurers as well, and also the clients will know that they're going to have support to hire this insurance, which is so important when there is a climate event. According to my point of view, just to close this point, the more adequate products to serve several cultures and regions, and more adequate to the grower and the farmer. Two, the experience, good experience from the clients, public support with private action as well, and also have a process that is broadcasted or informed so that the producer can notice or see the insurance as an item of a technological package. And I believe this is the work that we have to do in the sector, that the producer must look at the rural insurance like he looks to the fertilizer, because he says, yeah, I need this because if there is a climate event, I'll have coverage. We have not yet reached this level in all the aspects. I think this should be our conversation should be focused on this, according to the producer's point of view.
Thank you, Renato. The agri-producers have been needing to adopt more and more sustainable practices, and obviously all these measures have also helped their productivity, right, which is good for the producer. But Abagi mentions that it's important to have agricultural policies that are more transparent and more integrated, right? So in your point of view, what measures would be more effective to broaden the access of those producers to rural insurances and create more stability to the access of the product? So thank you, Esteves. Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here, all of you. The House of Insurance really looks beautiful, looks great, and it's good to be here to talk about the importance of insurance within the agricultural sectors in different areas. And let me start by saying this. When we look at agricultural policies in Brazil, and it's pretty much like that in other countries around the world, they usually give the importance of it, and it's protected by the Constitution as well in a way. And for agricultural instruments, we have adopted safe credit and risk management. Those are the matrices in Brazil. Within that context, the biggest burden and weight on the balance is for credit. So when we look at incentives and planning, we have chosen more credit. And of course, it was mentioned about the TSR in the past and other measures, but it seems to us, and you have said that as well, we are reducing the covered area. So it's kind of going on the opposite direction, and it's not making a lot of sense to us. And we're still seeing the risks increasing in the climate change and risks taking its toll as well. So for improvement and incentives, what we need is to shift the way that we look to insurance and rural insurance and give it a more protagonist role. Minister Roberto has said that we have done something very similar. That was when we're creating the agro business bonds. We basically wanted a less participation of the state and more support of the national treasury. And we walked towards incentivized instruments from the private sector. So we basically shifted from public to private sector. Today, most of the investments come from the private sector. Can we translate something similar to the insurance sector? We might be able to. Again, what we need is more incentive and planning we had during the private credits. So the thing about planning is that it's being more like year and production yield. So it needs to be more of a medium to long term. Farm Bill in the United States works with a 10-year long planning. So when you think of a plan like that, it's always late. And what's the forecast for the producer? How do they react to something like this? So what we need is to having a state policy that is more consistent. That for me is paramount. When the state plans and incentivizes, the culture increases and thus the purchasing and acquiring increases. And what was mentioned before by my panelists, the negative aspects will decrease because if everybody participating at a better scenario, people would pay less. So the equation, the way we do things needs to change, needs to shift. And it's sad, right? When we talk about a covered area insured being reducing like that, it's very sad. This can't happen. Look at the people that we have here at the panel. How can you establish programs and strategies from companies in a context that you can't even count on something that was forecasted? There's the bill 2951 from Minister Teresa Cristina that is trying to set a different model. Is it done yet? Not yet. It's not regulated, but it's trying to establish a foundation for a new program. It's trying to at least signal into that direction. And that's what we should do. They need to show us where we could go, the path that we have. When we're creating CPR in 94 and all the different agro bonds, the regulatory structure was nudging us into that direction, and that worked. We had Fiagro who came out of that whole process that you all know. So that was amazing. Over 40 B in Fiagro management. It's a lot of private credit that was injected into that whole scenario, and you need something similar to the insurance sector. So maybe within the way that we are trying to be nudged into with the creation of a new regulatory framework from the initiative from the Federal Senate, we might be able to provide the foundation to help us move forward into that direction within the new model. If I have incentive like that, the market will follow, the producer will follow, the insurances and the reinsurances will have more safety as well within that type of context with economic activity that is better organized. It's quite sad also to see in a situation like happened in Rio Grande do Sul, where everybody was trying to work around it and trying to minimize the damages. But shouldn't we have done that before? Isn't it better to work in forecasting it rather than in placing and investing money in the health system? We're treating the results of that in the health system, and that needs to change. What we need to do is work with the producer because the instruments are there, the policies are there. As part of a solution that should come with the regulation is about changing that foundation, correct the asymmetries that we have, so we won't have anyone that will do it by themselves. The government will be incentivize us, and the private sector will try to do what they can. And I'm sure that most of the people here is already part of the solution, is part to implement the solution. What we need now is, again, good policies, incentives, and planning from the state. Thank you so much, Renato. Now, the next question is for Eduardo, but I'd like to say first that the Safra plan is decided in the middle of the year with the budget that was voted in the previous year. So what's the flexibility that you have to find a space in a budget that's already pre-approved? So it's a budget that is completely stuck, and 93, 94% is mandatory expenditure. So how can we find room in that? So it's annual, which is already bad, and it's also it's always a step behind. So I want to ask Eduardo and what was said before about the path, where we're going, a direction from the government. So Eduardo, in your point of view, what are the three main technological and regulatory bottlenecks in the market so that the agro sector can effectively find the neutrality of the carbon emissions? And on top of that, what's the priority in terms of action so we can accelerate the path towards decarbonization in the country? So thank you for the question. Without a question, I would say that science, finances, and regulations are the three main things. On the science part of things, and it's quite interesting what Ronaldo has said, we have worked together for so many years that soon I'll pass the bar and become a lawyer as well like him. Or we can maybe create a sort of a duo. We can work together here. I don't know. Yeah, maybe. So it's interesting because when we look at the disaster that happened in Rio Grande do Sul, and I am the president of the C-Carbon Center, which is in Piracicaba, and we were trying also to rebuild Rio Grande do Sul. And one of the things that we needed to have organic material in the soil. Once you have that, every point of organic material, it's the same as 1,000 liters of water in the soil. So you increase water retention, so you reduce the impact of floods in the soil. In order to have organic material, you need life. For life, you need a pH, and most of the plants need over 5.5 or 6 pH level, and half of the Rio Grande do Sul producers doesn't use limestone. And of course, the original tribes used to do agriculture and do that way before the white man arrived here, right? But agriculture as we know it in Brazil basically was born in the state of Rio Grande do Sul. It's the birthing place of agriculture in Brazil, and half of it still doesn't use lime. It's the de-risking technology, the cheapest we have in the world, and we don't use it. São Paulo uses 60%, and Pará we use 80%. So we're not even doing the basics over there. And that's important. So science, from basic science to use lime and correct the soil is something that we learned very early in college, and apparently we haven't learned that well. And the second part of it is the tropicalization. The rules of the game were made in the Northern Hemisphere. It wasn't made for us. We're close to the equator. Right, a part of Brazil is close to the equator, but obviously it was done where it snows. So if I need to dig a hole of 30 centimeters to see if I have carbon or not, because it's cold and it snows, right? And no, it's not that doesn't happen. It's not like that. Half of the life is within those 30 centimeters. There's 70 more, but I need to dig a 30 centimeters hole. So that doesn't make any sense. It makes absolutely no sense that we do the same. It was done differently there. So we need to work in tropicalization. Now, when it comes to finance, for obvious reason, it's not safe. In insurance, of course, we have the specialists here, but there's the whole aspect of blended financing, how we blend different type of resources and the data portion of it. Because if we don't know the land, how are we going to price insurance? How do we know where has more risk in the area? If it's only about helping where it's already appropriate and good, it would be easier. But here, it's quite different. But here in Brazil, we have challenges. And here, it's something that ABHG has been working quite a lot to regulate the decree of PCA, something that needs to be done. We should be here a copy with that done. And Article 6, if we do that, we're talking about a sector that needs to do something about it, and the minister will do something. And if they do that, that's great. We have surplus. We might have surplus. The entire industry with energy issues 200, if I'm not mistaken, which they should grant some type of permission in 10%. If it's something should be something around 20, would be generating 500. That's the magnitude of things. So I need the international market to be part of it, to sell credit abroad, and I need to have it. So that's an important aspect of it that we need to work with. So science, finance, and regulation, that's the path forward that we have been trying to. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your answer. Another thing that's key for the insurance sector, for the insurance, it was mentioned that the indemnizations for the climate risks have been growing in the previous years. How do we balance the necessity of allowing insurance to be affordable for the producer with the necessity, while keeping the financial health of the insurance, because it needs to keep it alive, right? Thank you, Esteves. That's definitely one of the questions that we debate the most, especially in the last years. And we have to talk to the shareholders quite a lot about that as well, because of the compensations that we have had in the past. So that's a concern. And to give you one example for a crop, a harvest from 21-22, during one of the most dried periods in the south of the country, in Paraná, Rio Grande do Sul, according to Embrapa, soy and CNA, we might have gotten to close to 70 billion in loss in the GDP because of those states. And what happened? And those 75 billion, 8 billion was compensated by the insurance market. So it was the biggest compensation from the agricultural insurance sector. BB Seguros compensated 3 billion. So that was something, definitely a turning point for us to think of how the risk management absorbs these risks and losses. So before I go deeper into that, there's something else that I'd like to mention in terms of context, because I think that it's the start in order for us to have a more stable market, in order for us to develop a business plan that adds more sustainability for the rural insurance in the country. So thinking of a program, what has worked quite a lot is that, in my point of view, and maybe some other professionals might agree with me, we have structural pillars that are basic for the rural insurance. We might need to strengthen those pillars and maybe complement with other things that maybe we don't have yet. But what worked around the world, when we look at countries that have a strong agriculture, that is concerned about food safety, and has developed rural models that is sustainable, what worked the best was three main work fronts, to try to be short. The first, obviously within a public-private structure, looking at the market, you need to have a program organization that involves the public and the private sector. But the biggest three fronts are strategies that you foster demand. And by fostering demand, what worked is strategies of subsidy for the rural producers. So you have the public investing for insurance. So that's the first thing. The second point for demand is that usually you have agency risks from the government assembled within the ministries, and those agencies, they build discussions in risk pricing. They participate in the insurance coverage, trying to bring the productive sector towards the discussion. So when you design a rural insurance, the productive sector is part of it. The producer agrees with it. He brings his demand. So that's one of the aspects. And third, communication plans and for training the agents that are part of this environment. That is for you to build a culture of insurance. So that's a big vertical. The other vertical would be fostering offer, increasing offer. Once you increase the offer, the strategies of fostering that depends on some aspects. The first is regulation. So the companies that start to work with rural insurance and insurance to join that market, which is risky and very specific and specialized, the insurer needs a type of clear horizon and predictable horizon. So the regulation of rural insurance is very important, and the rules need to maintain and you need to believe in the long term. So that has worked in some countries. And the other thing about offer is that you need loss limitation strategies. When you look at a catastrophe insurance, in the case of Brazil, which we have the most catastrophic market for insurance, which is the rural one, the countries that made it work have built fund structures combined with reinsurance that limited the loss of the market. So you have loss ceilings, and that has worked in quite a lot. Even the bill that you mentioned, right, has that element in order for us to have a catastrophe fund better established. And at the same time, looking at the offer of insurance, then we have the entire discussion of the private sector building on technology that we have talked before. The third pillar that has worked in other countries is the surveillance and monitoring. So monitor for all the agents, make sure that they are upholding their work. By doing that, I think the program works, and then we go into what Renato said about growing the purchase of the insurance in terms of regional dispersion of risks, and by penetrating other chains of production that reduces costs and allow us to be more resilient in the market. Post 21 and 22, a lot of insurance left the market. That is something of concern because this market has a lot of reinsurance. All of the capital is put into the insurance of rural products. At least 75% in average of the capital comes from the reinsurance market. Only 25 to 30% stays with the Brazilian insurance companies. So obviously, there's still quite a big concern in terms of results. And then the biggest paradigm here in terms of the reinsurance, which is something we have noticed more and more for after 21, 22, is to work with three important aspects. The first is to recalculate our losses. That's a fundamental part of it, that we weren't expecting that much of a loss, and now we have been doing more robust statistical studies to incorporate the possible losses in our models, work with risk modeling, like I said during the first question, in order for us to have a pricing perspective and subsidy perspective that is more adhering to that production. And then we are working close to Embrapa, the SAC Níveis de Manejo program, the pilot project that we are working with in order to price the best practices, and the technological aspect of it, which helps us to avoid fraud and control the operation better. So the reinsurers are following that in order to predict their losses better and define better results, obviously helping the market as a whole to discuss how we create a program by using the foundation that we already have and complementing some of the strategies so the insurance can hold its own and have a better long-term sustainable market. Thank you so much. So you from FGV has pointed out that budget instability is a relevant challenge. So what are the regulatory alternatives or from the institution that could guarantee a better predictability and a better scalability for PCR and by consequences for the rural insurance without exclusively needing from the budget or waiting for a contingency? First of all, thank you, Paulo, for your answer. You already laid a foundation for my answer. So, Paulo, what I wanted to say is that I visited Spain twice in the past 5 years. I spoke with Minister Jaime that in 1978 implemented the insurance in Spain. And one of the different things that they did that is that the government is quite clear, and our government isn't. You had insurance, so you have access to nothing else. If you haven't had insurance yet, you can renegotiate your debt. You can reach default. You might have judicial and extra legal services surrounded. So our government is not that good with our public policies. Our public policies do not consider insurance as part of mandatory policies, and we need that type of work because there's no insurance without the reinsurance. The reinsurance are the one taking most of the risk, and most of them are multinational, most of them actually. So if you do not have predictability in a budget, what happened in the US in that sense that they decided a pluriannual policy. Spain has 50% the size of Minas Gerais. Spain represents 7 to 10 times less importance than agriculture, depending on the sector that you look at. And Spain has approved, because they already know it was pre-approved in November, 2 billion reals. We don't even have 500 millions. But they might have discussed about insurance in 78. They do that for quite some time. Great. But do you know when was the first time that people sat in a room like this in a Congress to discuss agricultural policies? 1978 in Recife. And we had 3 demands. The producers want rural credit, technical assistance, and rural insurance. We discussed that in 1978. Ministry said that it was quite silly, the government not having that. But if you stop and analyze, we have 26 billion reals, 6 billion for Pronaf, 6 billion for the machine industries as subsidies, while the industry has a cross subsidy that goes into the income tax of the producer. He could discount on that tax to pay for machines. So we have 6B for industries. We have a reorganization expense in indebtedness, and we had a survey done in 2012 in which we have seen that we can get the data for renegotiations of debt in Brazil. Now, because of the law of access of information, we requested that, and that data doesn't exist. There are a lot of journalists here, right? So I dare journalists to look inside the government for information regarding what was spent in the last 5 to 10 years in terms of reorganization of debts. There's no data. So a country that doesn't know how much has been spending in renegotiations, what is this? What are we doing? So we don't have 500 million for insurance, but we just made 12 billions for the MP in the last one that we've seen. And no, people don't know, but I'll say that 11.9 B in the Desenrola Brasil, in the Family Agriculture Program, this is 24 billion. How much that's going to cost? These are renegotiations that last 5 to 9 years, and that the government is spending and wasting resource. In the international monetary funding, we have seen that there are ways that the bank should be working, and we don't have that here. And the same goes for the National Development Bank. So when we talk about renegotiation, the insurance goes by very fast. And we need to change that. Unfortunately, we don't have people from the government here because we're always maybe talking to ourselves. So as a society, the role of FGV Agro is to unite the public sector. And the discussion that we're having right now here in the private sector is important. It needs to send through for the bill, for what Cristina has said. We need to say that, and I can say that here, I was a bank manager in the past. Brazil's rural credit is very amateur. We need to be professionals. We need to become professionals. How can a bank manager in a financial institution finance an industry that would experience climate weathers? The only thing that we'll experience is climate. That's a certainty. We will experience adverse weather effects. We know Brazil is of continental proportions. We have basically different type of issues like that, and we'll need to pay compensation or renegotiate. And the government has chosen to go for the emergency funds. For the 26 million from Proagro, Proagro is 6 to 7 times more inefficient than the rural insurance. For every real we spent in subsidies, this is data from 2021, by the way, and we spent in insurance and PCR, it generates in insured value 6 to 7 times more the insurance, the rural insurance, in finance value. So it gets to more area and more producers. And then you can transfer that math to debt renegotiation. All debt negotiation starts from the same original interest rate when the contract was signed, or even less. So how can a country like ours continue, our society, who pays for it, continue to accept this? Part of this 26 billion, or most of it, is already a mandatory resource. And what we should do is to get part of the resources for Proagro, transfer for the insurance. All the rural credits should be mandatory to be insured. If not, you do not get extraordinary help from the government. We create funds. We can have assuring funds, guaranteeing funds. We have that in Colombia and other countries. It basically means that the producer and the financial institution that create that insurance with the credit can access a fund for extraordinary aid. The rural insurance does not cover all the problems. A producer in Spain that have lost everything with an event that was very similar to what we had in Rio Grande do Sul. Basically a massive flood that floods everything, tunnels and all. People sometimes get stuck in their vehicles inside the tunnels and they die. And a lot of plantations that they had in Madrid. In October, they experienced another thing as well. The producer over there simply have his entire plantation, all his equipment, everything else taken away by the water. Does the rural insurance cover for everything? No, it doesn't. But if the producer in Spain had an insurance, they have access to an extraordinary fund aid in order to help him recover, and we are doing the opposite. The producer who has a risk management, he basically has to pay, he suffers, and the producer who didn't do anything, who doesn't do any type of risk management of his soil, he gets a debt renegotiation, which is basically a safe net for the next 20 years, and that generates poverty actually, because he'll have less access to credit, he even lose his own assets, and there will even be other things that we cannot even discuss in public, but it destructures the entire family, which is basically happening in Rio Grande do Sul right now. So we are in the limit, and the government needs to open their eyes, and it's up to us here in this room as a society to open the government's eyes.
Rafael, along this line, and trying to consider what Pedro and Paulo said, these large events that happened, El Niño, 2023, 2024, where you have a huge loss, and then you got the end of the risk curve. Now, how does the insurance sector deal with this? How can regulation help you to deal with the risk that sometimes goes beyond the average, what would be normal? Well, in the last years, climate event La Niña affected many regions strongly, and something happened that we already imagined, but not in the proportion. But agricultural area is exposed to medium and large events. This leads to volatility. So we need to do things very precisely in terms of risks, so that the insurance company has to have results. And as Paulo mentioned, and Pedro as well, catastrophe fund is also important. What I have mostly heard in the last year is that nothing happened like this. We never had such a big drought. We never had such a hail in 40 cities and so many coffee plantations in areas. I've heard this never has more than 4 times. So we have to think in terms of a catastrophe fund, because in a situation like this, it's very harmful. Now, on the side of the insurance company, we have developed technological and precise risk tools to conduct an analysis for each of the producers. Looking to a farm in the last 10 years, we see the behavior. Does this producer have a different management compared to the neighbor? If he does, he then deserves a better coverage. If he doesn't do that much, his coverage must be lower. So we are adapting so that the losses can be proportional to the risk. And lastly, uh, it would be the backlog of risk. The insurance company must work this so that there is a controlled exposure, and also they have to keep controls, because this risk control is observed by our partners, which we call reinsurance, which is essential in this process. It's important to mention this to everyone, because in an extreme climate event, it can work as a buffer, so to say, of such impact, so that we cannot then put to the end customer the climate event that occurred in the following year. So obviously there is going to be something that's going to pass through to him, but not as much. Technology tools such as control have more stability in the insurance. Reinsurance and government support and have guarantee funds are necessary tools to maintain this balance in price. Okay, Renato, along the same lines, and regarding the policy, the adoption of a more sustainable and resilient agriculture, what do you see as the main measures? What can be done that in a way or the other, this can be expected in the insurance premium, or for example, the crop interest rate? How can uh, this be analyzed in terms of sustainability, resilience, creating a virtuous cycle for the producer? Well, complementary to what was mentioned in the first part, all of us here mentioned that, and we arrived to this point of view. We have to have this foreseeability. Regulation must set clearly where the economic agents will come in and how they will come in this context. The PL says that there are two pillars among others, but the essential one is that, which is a compulsory expense. Now, I'm going to put this in a way that it's going to be done, and the foreseeability is going to be given to all the agents that participate in this process. Now, another condition, for example, what the market doesn't purchase, the catastrophe is not bought by the market. So we need a specific fund to assure, guarantee this, and bring this negative sampling. So then there is a clearer field in this way. Now, going into this pathway of sustainability, I believe that it's important for this to be at the end of this, but I heard from very good specialists, but um, this structure has to be worked efficiently. For example, and many of you talked about inefficiency in the engine. Uh, while the infrastructure is not efficient and productive, the superstructure, which is environmental services, this would be the icing of the cake. It's going to be too far away. So I really need to fulfill the basic matrix, this waterline of production efficiency, insurance, credit, and risk management. And I promise I believe in this triad. It is not only in its best efficiency in the current model, but then we will battle clearly to add this all up. Credit will be more and more private and green. It only depends on us to do this matrix work and go further. And I believe in this, as I said. So we're giving steps in this sense. And what is missing is a better planning, a policy that has like a longer period, so to say. So this has been the concern, and gives the feeling that we have evolved very little, actually. So this has been this always comes up. So I hope that the project of law, so I would like it to be this inducer, the catalyst. It is not a new model, it's a new regime of rural insurance in Brazil. I believe this will happen. Thank you. Now, we are pressing time, so we hope that this bill goes through. Well, anyway, just your final words then. Wow. I'd like to thank you all, and we have battled a lot doing the agri. Well done is the solution. So maybe according to my technical profile, maybe I get quite stressed to see so many amazing things that can be done ahead. And once again, sometimes the basic is to do, we need more resilience, prepare for more resiliency, but it's used in climate, in the language, but also in agriculture. So we combine things and arrange things so we can advance rapidly, because the world needs, and Brazil deserves it, and we'll surely have this done. Thank you very much. Paulo? I'd like to thank you all and say that BB Seguros is available both institutionally wise to strengthen the model. We are here since the beginning of the process. We are the insurer of the agribusiness. It's the vertical product of the company, and we want to advance in studies and well technique and sciences so that we can bring the insurance to more good practices rather than recovery and losses. So this is our position, and we will thank you, CNseg, for the invitation, and congratulations for this panel. I thank CNseg for the invitation. We are located on Avenida Paulista to receive those of the public and also private sector to continue this discussion regarding rural insurance and other kinds of insurance and reinsurance as well. The director is Goretti, that is here with us. And also I'd like to say that I am an eternal optimistic regarding the rural insurance, because we know that many people battled for this. They opened the pathway for this, and I really hope that we can manage to avoid the worst in the following years. We had a very large retraction in these last 3 years, and we also need to honor what the country has as its best, like Embrapa that did the agricultural zoning and also level of management, and also the Ministry of Agriculture, where I had the honor to work there. They have a Department of Risk Management that work with 5 people. I went to Chile these last days, actually to Peru, in an insurance event, a parametric insurance event, and at the table we had many Peruvian individuals. And then I asked, who are these people? I said, these are people that work with insurance. And they were in 7 individuals. They are bigger than Brazil in this sense, because we have 5 people working. So we have to work with risk management, because this is going to be the revolution of the different management. We have 7 insurance company and in the agribusiness, and we have a huge network of agents and experts, and there is a huge industry to give the support to the producer, and more importantly, the country to develop with more foreseeability. Thank you very much. Rafael, I'd like to thank the participation for this event. And we in ARIS, we really believe that the agricultural insurance contribute to the resilience of our country and also food safety of our nation and the world as well. And our commitment is not only a financial protection, but Allianz is a partner of the agribusiness producer to build a more resilient, robust system that is more resilient and with sustainability. I thank you once again for the debate and time. Renato, I'd also like to thank once again for being here. It is very pleasant to be able to talk with this team in such a lovely house. And I just like a simple thing, fulfill our designation to be leader in sustainable agriculture. This is what we must look for. This is our goal. So we obviously will depend on the public and private sector first, but we have all the elements for this. We just follow this pathway. Thank you. Thank you very much. It was fantastic. Congratulations.
Muito obrigada aos nossos painelistas pela contribuição.
Panelists for this contribution. Our next topic will be technology and innovation in the field for climate resilience. In this panel, we will cover how the adoption of innovative technology and solutions in the field can strengthen resilience of agricultural production in the face of climate change. The discussion will feature examples of digital tools, climate monitoring, precision agriculture, and new production practices that support both sustainability and risk reduction, promoting greater security for producers and the insurance market. Now, to compose this panel, I invite to the stage Raquel Montagnoli, Head of Sustainability, CNH, Case New Holland, Leo Carvalho, Director, Chief Global Strategy Officer from Solintec, Murilo de Oliveira, CEO, Altsat, Jairo Costa, Insurance Manager Latam, Syngenta, Ivo Kaneshiro, Superintendent of Sustainability, MAPFRE, and Guilherme Bastos, Coordinator of FGV. You have the floor. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to everyone. It is a pleasure to be back here at the plenary session and to discuss a topic which is very important and relevant, which is about technology, innovation in the field for us to promote this resilience. I'd like to thank our panelists for your presence, and we do not have much time. We actually pressed in time. Our previous panelists went over the limit of time. Now we will begin with Ivo Kanashiro, Superintendent of Sustainability from MAPFRE. Ivo, the rural insurance has been challenged to deal with bigger risks, quite complex and volatile. According to your point of view, how can technology and sustainability change the role of the insurance company that pay claims for producers in terms of sustainable practices? On behalf of MAPFRE, thank you for the invitation. Well, I'll begin my presentation or my talk saying that clients with sustainable practices are those that have good risk management. So this client that has the lowest risk. In this sense, the connection between low risk and sustainable practice is inherent. So this client is what we would like to have in our portfolio, the client that innovates, but also he's in a risk, adequate risk. We got to put forth things that are important. When you talk about technology, we have to say that in the data world, the opening of data and the availability of such data will give us more and more accuracy in the new subscription model. This helps us understand the client better, follow and manage risk. Obviously, climate change, as we have seen in the last years, there is a need of processing these data. There are several variables, different information, and scenarios we are subject to face this new world that we're living in. For this, AI has come to help us in this data processing, giving us much more information. Now, what we do is we use this information and check if it's quality information, and so that it can support and give to our risk model a relevance, so that we can more and more calibrate our risk model. And lastly, on the other hand, obviously we have innovation, and the technology used in the field today is of total interest of insurance companies, because we have this incentive and we have also the dissemination of such practices. And this goes in hand with what we have in terms of purpose, increasing capillarity, and also close the gap that we have in Brazil. That are things that when they go hand in hand, they strengthen each other. And I say that sustainability is a catalyst. It'll help to boost many other things, especially with respect to insurance. Good sustainability practices can be this catalyst that can reduce this coverage gap. Thank you very much. Now, a nevralgic point regarding data for you to improve, and this perception of this risk reduction with the adoption of such practices. Today, we see USARC in terms of management levels, showing the experiment in the field and how much soy productivity increased, decreased, and compared to when there isn't an adequate risk management. Well, now let's hear how can sustainable management has evolved fastly, but we know that there are adoption barriers in the field. What has worked to draw the producer closer to these solutions? Good afternoon. Firstly, thank you very much on behalf of Syngenta for your participation of talking here about a segment that conducts the country. So it's a pleasure to be here in this conversation. The point here, Guilherme, that every change then causes discomfort initially, but we have to start breaking this paradigm with the producer through innovation hubs and having ambassadors, be them agronomists, which the producer trusts, and also the cooperative. They should be the ambassador and know our solution, so that the producer can feel more comfortable to interact with technology. We need to show the benefit to this producer and how much this technology adoption tends to reduce his costs and increase productivity, so that he can see the financial result. Besides being something that is better, it will bring more benefit to this producer. Now, the um, the approach must be more simplified, because we know technology has a number of names, acronyms, so we have to have a simpler language and a technology or a solution, one at a time, something with satellite data, and then we go deeper. Now, preferably, uh, link this to the technology the producer uses. Does he use precision technology? We need to give them this process so that it generates less impact, and also technical support. So the point of having someone that gives support is very important. We have apps that can, in the app, contact the technician to give them support. So the time of response is very important in this respect. So I believe that these are the points that makes the introduction of technology uh, occur with the producers. How can Syngenta team show the producer the benefits in the adoption of such practices? What have you been worked on internally for this approach with the producer? Besides the solution of the product itself, right, fertilizers and seeds, we have a technology called WISE. We supply NDVE satellite data and the management following the end-to-end farming process. We can give him support for the application of product in the area that has pests, for example, so he can optimize using the resource, preserve the environment, conserve the environment. We have technology which is also linked to the John Deere tractor, where we can apply the fertilizer in an optimized format so that you don't harm the environment. There's no waste of products. And all of this at the end of the day will generate a cost reduction and a higher and better productivity because the risk management is being done adequately. So it's an extension process. So it's a continuous treatment with the producer to show the benefits. And that's right. Thank you. Murilo, you as CEO of Outside that work with monitoring real time of crops and climate risk. According to your point of view, how can data and remote sensing and monitoring technology improve pricing and also safer, making things more agile, also in conformity with the social environmental aspect. Thank you, Guilherme. Good afternoon to everyone. It is a huge honor to be here at this COP30 in the insurance house. Thank you, CNseg, for the invitation, FGB Agro, and ABAGI for the organization of this panel. Well, I'm going to start talking about my history in the monitoring that happens in a more different way. Had never seen a satellite image in my life. I was a technology guy. I worked in fintechs and banks. And the moment I saw the satellite image the first time and I started working with this, I really became passionate. I saw that the field, the crops, and the forests are alive. They're living beings, and data can tell this history, sorry, tell the story in real time. So in 2012, I had the opportunity to participate in the rural register in Brazil, and I saw that geotechnology and geointelligence can transform public policies in concrete results. Now, in 2016, there was a technological leap and regulatory leap. The central bank started allowing the use of remote sensing satellite images for the rural credit. And at the same time, the Planet arose, which is a United States satellite operator. They were engineers from NASA and founded and also established the largest satellite imaging company where they supply daily satellite image from the planet Earth. So as of that, we then founded Outsat because we believe that with the daily monitoring, something that we do since 2016, we have managed to replace the guessing work by evidence. So now we're working with the largest bank, credit cooperative, and insurance company of the country. And talking more specifically about the insurance, regarding the subscription part, we managed to bring the history of that area, how it behaved throughout the last crops, bringing a risk score, allowing the insurance company to price according to the risk of that producer. Now, in the follow-up process, we have managed to do a daily process before planting and also until after the harvest. We then follow initially before the event or the catastrophe occurs, and if there was if the planting was not done in all the area, or there was, for example, a non-covered risk, even before the occurrence of the climate event. This gives more safety to the insurance company. Now, when there is a claim or an accident, we daily check the images. We see the crops, the planting with the Ozark window, which is or from Embrapa, and identify if it is in the risk of 20, 30, or 40% or outside Ozark. And we also generate a map that shows that was impacted by the climate event. So, for example, of 100 hectares, the expert cannot map the whole area himself. So technology is essential in this process. And it's interesting to say that of the 70 insurance companies that work in the marketplace for rural insurance, the two ones that has the least claims is the one that use the daily monitoring process. So this is an indication, a strong indication that investing in technology is a cost that soon repays it for, and this reduces risks, mitigates frauds, and also brings more foreseeability with what we need to build a more reliable, sustainable, and resilient rural insurance.
Thank you, Murilo. It's really amazing how technology can help, and we have been seeing this evolution, how everything is more accessible. So you can work with the monitoring and help, maybe not substitute, but to complement and help the process of surveilling and all of that. I have a question. What's the level of the resolution? So Planet has a daily frequency and has a high resolution of 3 meters that is greater than others free satellites that we have available, and we were able to identify areas after zero point 0.2 hectares. So we are working quite a lot in the Proargo with the smaller areas, but even for the bigger areas, the spatial resolution is quite important as well, because we are able to identify, even if in a 100-hectare area, to identify the crops, and a different type of management of the soil that the producer did. So we can understand if producer planted in different dates, which you can see. We are able to identify that part of the field was planted at a 20% risk, the other part of the field was planted outside Zarki, so that brings a lot of return in terms of data for the insurance, and also when we're talking about Proargo, that also brings a lot of savings for the public entities. And in terms of coverage in Brazil, how many hectares are you doing, and for what products? Okay, so today we monitor over 30 million hectares in Brazil, and since we work with Brasilseg since 2018, we already have analytics for all regions in Brazil. Today we work with crops like soy, corn, rice, cotton, sugar canes, and now we are working for a parametric insurance for livestock. Thank you so much. Let's go to Leo Carvalho. Yesterday, we talk to you. It's great to have you back. So, Leo, Brazil has advanced in terms of digital innovation in agro, but the adoption it's very much uneven among different regions and profile of producers. What kind of policies or partnerships could accelerate the use of technologies and connect them to the real insurance and the climate agenda? Thank you for your question, Guilherme. Pleasure to be here with all of you representing Solifitec in the house of insurance that I'm sure is one of the best places here at COP. And hopefully this place will happen again in other editions. So thank you, CNseg, for the invitation. So Solinfitec is a technology company in the countryside area of São Paulo that tries to bring what's the cutting edge there available for the producer. We know that if it's not climate, AI was probably the most repeated word at COP. And the producer doesn't need to know what kind of technology is being used. He needs the return, he needs to save his time, he needs a better productivity. In the panel here, we have technology companies, machineries, inputs, insurance companies, and all of that is in order to strengthen the weakest chain of the link of the chain, which is the producer, but we will need to talk about food safety too. And the only ones available to improve the link is the producer. So Solinditech is placing energy on the producer, potentializing and empowering his decisions through technology. For a long time, we have installed, and we to this day still install sensors in the machinery, in tractors, in the harvesters, the trucks. We collect data in real time, and we give insights for the producers, for the managers at the factories, and for the producer owners in order to base their decision. But we have understood that despite the fact that you are always with the operation, there's still an opportunity gap, just like Murilo said. With the satellite imaging, you still have a gap in terms of what's going on in the field. Here in Belém, it rains a lot, there's strong winds, the weather is hot, everything might be experienced the same day. For a crop, can you imagine the different type of weather conditions it can experience? Can you imagine how hard it is for an insurance company to insure a producer without knowing what's going on the field? And we identified that problem 4 years ago. The company has over 18 million of monitor and surveil actors in the country and the world, and we understood that the easiest way in order for us to have a reliable data is not placing sensors in the existing machinery, but to placing robotics in the field. And that's the biggest edge that our company have. We create an autonomous robot based and powered through solar panels and battery, thus removing the use of fossil fuels in the field. And that robot is placed at Green Zone here, which is a very nice initiative that I found here at COP that Embrapa created. And I think it's going to be a good legacy for the other COPs. It is here at the Green Zone, and the robot is the result of a necessity from the producer. When we're talking about specifically agribusiness, the producer today is trying to balance on top of two big pillars. One is machinery. Every year he tries to improve his productivity by acquiring better and updated machines. And the other one is inputs. Pesticides, defenses, or even new seeds, new molecules, in order for him to gain productivity. And he sells commodity at the end of the day. So he's based in two pillars, and the pricing is done by the market. So he doesn't have other opportunities to be more effective. And we, as Solitech, we have decided to position in the middle of the big pillars, in between machineries and inputs. Because by doing that, we're able to make that autonomous robot to optimize in up to 80% in the use of chemicals in the world and reduce the use of machinery in the field. This is a big disruption and turning point of agribusiness, and it's definitely a new form of concept. I need to say that if today we are able to eat because of these big corporations and these big pillars, what brought us here most likely won't be able to carry us on the next 20 or 30 years. Me and Guilherme were part of the panel yesterday, and we were talking about the responsibility that Brazil has in the world food safety. We'll be responsible for feeding over 10% of the global population. And the producer, in order for him to have his savings and his results, it will need to learn new practices, be it for insurances or agronomical techniques or climate practices. It will be the only way that the producer will be able to keep competitive. And I'm talking about all of this here because Guilherme mentioned about the entry barriers. And those barriers are such that the producer, within his pyramid of decision, technology is not at the top. On the top is the machinery, inputs, and land. And lastly, technology. But the pyramid needs to turn upside down. And in order to do that, technology needs to be democratic. The same technology that you're selling to the big producer needs to go to the smaller producer too, which goes in what you asked me, Guilherme. I am in favor of having a type of technology, be it from Solinfitech or any other company, that is called pay-per-view. Because the producer doesn't need to buy the hardware. Most of the time, he doesn't even need that hardware. What he needs is a service. He needs the results. Once you have that on hands and the result is there, the chance of him sharing his data with monitoring and efficiency with the insurance company is greater. And then I'm talking about an insurance that is connected, not necessarily connected with the subject of connectivity, because we know that's an issue for agro, but I'm talking about insurance connected in terms of having real-time data that is ongoing on the field and that the producer is sharing. That would be the turnkey. So that technology does become the top of his decision-making pyramid. And of course, all of that is going to make the producer to adopt new practices, new policies. And when we are able to get the public sector into the decision-making process, it's even better. The producer will then be able to get bonus or even awards or premiums from the insurance of the government through his best practices. The combination of inverting his decision-making and placing technology at the top of the decision-making priorities of the producer, I believe that it will influentiate the entire chain. Thank you, Leo. Let me ask something on what you said, actually. Thinking on that connection that the producer are starting to live with it, I think about the smaller producer. How will your technology, or how is your technology helping the smaller producer to understand about all this new data, and how is that helping him make decisions? Well, I need to talk about AI again. It's this technology that's helping us so much. Like I said yesterday, AI is so much part of our life that we can even choose a movie by ourselves. We have an algorithm suggesting movies for you. The producer will experience that. He won't need to make his decisions alone anymore. For a long time, technology providers believed that by delivering a beautiful report, a colorful report for the producer with different type of applications was enough. Then the producer, which has a lot of demands, also needed to analyze all those reports, sit down and make a decision in order to act. Now, there's not much time for that. The producer does not need to make that decision. Our AI and the technologies can make that decision for him. The example that I gave you for the robots, he is responsible for monitoring what's happening in the field. And by monitoring, I mean at a 3 degrees angle from the plant and the soil. He can identify the plant's health and identify if there's any type of pests, and he can apply the solution very locally. So there's no time for reports anymore. We don't need to spend time and energy with that. And it's the result of the evolution of technologies. The secret is, how are the companies getting what we have right now as the most valuable and important in the market and getting that to the agricultural businesses for the producer? Thank you, Leo. Thank you so much. So, Raquel, I go over to you, Head of Sustainability of CNH and part of the Conectar Agro. Raquel, connectivity is still a type of bottleneck in many regions. We like to remind that a lot of regions, even at the spaces of São Paulo and Campinas, you still have a lot of signal issues. What type of public policies or partnership models would be necessary in order to accelerate the digitalization process of the rural areas and reduce technological inequalities? Thank you, Guilherme. First of all, thank you for inviting us here from CNH, being part of this amazing place in House of Insurance, what you guys created. And I also wanted to say that I don't think everybody knows what's CNH. I'll let you know what CNH is. This is the Case New Holland, a machine production manufacturer. And I know a lot of the panelists talked about data, innovation, technology, and connectivity is at the core of everything. That's why CNH is one of the creators of Conectar Agro, that seeks to get the connectiveness to the field, the place in which we need to use technology the most in order to have a more sustainable agriculture. And within Conectar Agro, one of the things that we have been fighting for a lot is for public policies to leverage the result. Just to have an idea in terms of data, Conectar Agro, alongside UFV, conducted a survey in order to understand at what level the rural connectivity was, because we didn't have any type of data for that. And now we have, and the result is terrible. 33.9% is the level of connectivity that we have in the field in Brazil. So we need to move forward with that. And within Conectar Agro, we have been using FUST, the Universalization Fund of Telecom Services, which is part of your energy bill. We all pay a small fee for that fund. And the fund can be used as well to take connectivity to the field. So we need to talk about that. Today is more used for cities where we have a bigger concentration of people, and the fields tends to be left to the sidelines. So there's a huge potential for us to use that and get this to the field. And remember, there are people there. Although there's lesser concentration of people, when we get connectivity to the agriculture, to the fields, we're also getting that to the schools, to the city hall, better connectivity for maybe a hospital there. So that helps. That helps the community as a whole, and that is fundamental. Despite the things of Conectar Agro, we also have other partnerships. We have a partnership with Starlink, which is a new technology, a new amazing technology that helps us getting the connectivity closer to the fields. So I believe that it's through partnerships that we can do that, and we need to look to all the pieces of the chain, thinking about the governments, the private initiative, the new technologies that we have surfacing, and make sure everybody's on the same page so we can move faster, because we already seeing that we need speed. This is an emergency, a climate change that is already here, that we're experiencing. Thank you, Raquel. And another question, in terms of mission of Conectar Agro, you talked about the low index of connectivity. What are you waiting in terms of increasing it? What you're doing to contribute? What are you doing? How many producers are, for example, being impacted with your work? So I don't have all the data here available to you, but we already work with a lot of companies within Conectar Agro, have Nokia, Team, and many other, despite of on top of CNH, and we work with the articulation as well. We go to Brasilia, we try to be near the conversation, the dialogue within the federal sector to get the connectivity to the field. So those are the type of connections that make a difference. Right, and CNH is not it does not mean driver's license because in Portuguese CNH means is the acronym for driver's license. So it was just a joke about that. So Mafri has talked a lot about climate responsibility. How can the sector use data and partnerships to design products that stimulate and foster decarbonization in the field? Again, we need to remember that data has been a constant in terms of not only you thinking of the decarbonization process because you need the information from the field and climate data and data from the producer. So how are you doing and working with that in Mafre? Guilherme, before I answer that question, I need to say that to innovate without a purpose is not innovation. If we don't innovate, having very clear where we want to be, and when I talk about agro, insurance, sustainability, it's all about connection and what we expect from the future. It makes no sense if we do not have all of that together. So Mafre has very clear where we want to be. We have sustainability as a strategic pillar, and that slowly integrates all the different aspects of the company, especially business. Now, to answer your question, on the previous two last innovation awards that we had, both of the awards went to people with projects for agro. One was specifically for data and information. So that shows you how that is already part of our company. And as I said, with more data, I have better underwriting. And that is essential for us. And Mafre also has globally invested in acquiring or creating partnerships with companies that are looking for climate data. All of that in order to compare it to our own risk models. And as it was said before, for us to underwriting correctly and just, we need to know about a crop, a region, and Zarki that was mentioned. We need to consider all the possibilities so we can bring the correct policy to protect the rural producer. That's important because when we are talking, let's say, when we look at the protection gap from 12 to 16%, which is what we have right now in terms of insured crops and lands, we have a huge wave of producers who are not protected. And why not? So we have been talking a lot about the culture of insurance, how do we foster that culture, and the importance of insurance as being one of the main adaptation mechanism towards climate change. But we cannot do that by ourselves. This needs to be a collaboration between many different sector agents and the government as well, of course. So the government, the academia, private companies, and insurance companies. If we can get everybody on the same page together, we are able to have an agricultural business model that is sustainable and protected. Like we also said, that is closely related to the world food safety. The insurance is going to allow for the continuity of a business. That's the social role of insurance. It allows a business to continue to move forward. And for agriculture, that's fundamental. That's paramount to have people who can continue to grow their business because if they don't do that, that will impact resources and food for Brazil and the world. So combining all of that is important. In Mafre, we have worked with all of that, and we haven't only looked at sustainability as just a box. It's seen as part of the business. 2 days ago, for example, we brought a study about the gap, the insurance coverage gap around the world, and we brought a new product. It's a forestry insurance for non-commercial forest, focusing forest recovery, connecting with carbon. So we understood innovation, market interest, we placed that into our business, and we put sustainability as a catalyzer. Great, and how is the demand for the new product? Since Tuesday, It's been crazy, actually. We haven't had a lot of time yet, but after a couple, we then start having conversations about it. Even before, when we launched it, they're doing some meetings, and House of Insurance also made this possible and had created so many meetings for us to collaborate between partners and all of that. But we have a lot of people already wanting that product, and that goes to show you about the coverage gap. That's where the demand is coming from. The market needs more innovative products that put sustainability, climate, and protection on the same level. And is that product being part of the subsidy of insurance or not? No, because it's a new product. We just registered at SUSEP. It's important to say that SUSEP is having his new regulation of 437 of sustainable products. So there is a lot of movement in terms of regulating the market still. We have registered in that new criteria. So that's another innovation. We are waiting to see how it goes. It's important to say that we are at least ready to dare to try things out and to try to contribute to the market somehow. Yes, congratulations, Ivo. And remember, we're talking about 12 million hectares that needs to be recovered as part of our SDGs. And you can imagine a restoration company has said that it costs 30 to 40,000 per hectare. So with no insurance, how can you scale a project like that, right? So thank you, Ivo, and congratulations for your initiative at Mafre. Now, Jairo, going back to you at Syngenta, we need to think that the input sector is also very much exposed to risks. So what Syngenta has to do with insurance might not be so clear, but we see at our reseller, with the resellers, they end up being a risk taker when the producer doesn't harvest. He doesn't pay. Right, he can't pay. So Syngenta works throughout the entire productive chain from input to post-harvest. In what way the sharing of data and the integrated use of technology among the links in the chain can reduce loss and make agro more resilient and sustainable? Great, great question. Thank you. All right, so we talked a little bit about this subject, but when it comes to data, data makes the precision, assertiveness, and responsiveness of everything else faster. Like I said, we have technology that with John Deere tractors, we're able to identify the real necessity of fertilizers in the soil. So that creates an economy for the producer and is beneficial for the environment. So we only use what is necessary. The smart monitoring surveilling, we're able to identify in the field what are the areas who are plagued by pests. Thus, we avoid the pests to spread throughout the entire place, and we are then able to use only the necessary amount of product at that part of the field. So that's related to sustainability, right? I'm only using the product where it needs to be used, not in the entire field. There's also a operational efficiency, the communication with the producer, with the trading, the cooperative in terms of when I'm harvesting, so we don't have an issue with the trucks arriving too soon or too late or to arrive there and waiting days in order to be loaded. So it's another logistic cost that would impact the agribusiness a lot. So with that, you're able to optimize that aspect as well. There's also another very cool thing about it, which is a social impact, how you qualify your workers. So let's get an example of 20 years ago. We didn't have that. You had people working with sugar canes on the field that he was basically just that, working manually. But now you need skilled labor. So you qualify your employees learn more, they work with innovation. So it's a cycle, and it's awesome to see. The resilience, because you have more data, you know when to plant it, how to do it, the type of product that you're going to use, so you're able to absorb all the climate variation. And the traceability, because you're able to show what you use in a product, at what time you used it, so you are very much more transparent. It's also important to say that Let's get our background. Ever since Allison worked with Embrapa, in which we didn't have technology and how much he had developed. I remember we just mentioned that we lacked around 30% of what we consumed, right? We needed to import 30% 50 years ago, and now we have technology to export our products and our surplus. I see, and I still see, that we have a lot of resources. And we all here talked about how much the chain contributes to it. So we still don't have a public policy to democratize, like Leo said, the access to technology, incentivizing the adoption of technology in order to have a better productivity and a harvest. Although the insurers today have begun to look at the technology side of things, this still is not being shared among all the insurers. So today, an insurance company still can't make a difference between a producer that uses a lot of technology in their inputs and a lot of technology in terms of data to offer something different. So, with all those hardships that the sector faces, we still have a lot to deliver. We like to say that we began the year at an event, FGV, in which we had LASA and Brasilia in April. We had meetings from the thematic panels. We were at RSB. Today we are here, another milestone. So we are resilient. And we are now at an insurance event talking about technology, right? Talking about technology. So we need the ecosystem to be part of it. We need the government, the banks understand that even when they're conceding credit so that the insurance can offer better conditions, because we have something ready for some part of it ready, but we need the entire system to contribute.
Perfect, Jairo. We have a challenge together as chain and sector to advance, and this is it. Technology brings us together. Murilo, now let's hear about one more point regarding the experience that you had, the recent experience with the pilot project of Embrapa, MAPA, Cruzado, and level of management. We know that Brazil still has certain gaps in terms of climate base. There is a lot of information in MET and also other institutions, but it is indeed very fragmented. So this pilot project introduced subsidies that are differential in the rural insurance based on ARCs. Now, how do you think this integration will evolve and practice management practice and insurance policies based on data that you have? How was the experience in terms of this pilot project? What are the challenges so that it can scale nationwide? Well, this is an important point, and I'd like to begin also highlighting Embrapa's work. We, as Brazilians, we should be very proud of what Embrapa represents for the country. And the president of Embrapa was here at the Casa do Seguro Insurance House, and we had a lot of interaction with the Zaki network researchers, with Eduardo Monteiro, and Ozark level of management. It's an initiative that began 2020, and now 2025 shows the concrete results of such work. And this shows the importance of, since Embrapa will continue having the necessary investment to continue with this such important program. And the ARC's level of management, it sort of overcomes historic hurdles when we talk about sustainability programs. The first point that it resolves is to define what is sustainable management, what is correct management. There are very clear and well-defined in metrics that are quite transparent and clear for the producer themselves. This was quite amazing. And the second point is with respect to the independent checking process. Embrapa included the contact operator, soil operator, remote sensing operator. Outside is a licensed operator by Embrapa. So this is very important. And the operationalization, which is the third point, Embrapa managed to show in 2025 that it is indeed possible to operationalize the process. There was a small amount of resources for the management team, and 33 areas were analyzed, and of such, 29 became then policies. And as mentioned previously, plus the subvention, the level of management varied from 20 to 35%, 35% at the level of management 4, and the producers had more than 20% of subvention, which is the PSR standard. This shows that USARC level of management has come to stay. Now, we can also see that to award the producer that has better management, more sustainable management, this is the future. And with this, the insurance companies will price the service more adequate and not only based on the municipality. It will be priced individually for each producer and will enable the expansion of rural insurance in Brazil. As was mentioned here, currently it covers less than 5% of the agricultural land. In the US, it is over 90%. So they're in abyss to be climbed, and we believe that let's see if public possible will foster boost subvention. We hope we have a bigger subvention for the USARC level of management, and may Embrapa has continue having resources to invest in research and studies. There are other works in Embrapa that need these resources, and we believe that USARC level management level is not an experiment. It has proved itself as the future so that it can be adopted broadly for the insurance sector in Brazil. Excellent partnership with Embrapa. You touched on important point. We cannot wait for Embrapa resources coming to them from the government. We need the involvement of the private sector to continue the research. And I also like to remember that USAC, the resources, has come from an agreement with the central bank because of the Pro Agro program that has put these resources from Embrapa. We are missing a slide, Pedro, showing the 4 levels of management so that everybody can see exactly the coverage of soil and the difference of the soil coverage, because this is exactly what will differentiate one producer from the other. And that graph with the showing productivity in terms of soil, sort of soybeans reacting very well. We're really missing these graphs. But thank you very much. Leo, now according to your point of view regarding drawing these startups closer to this process, I'd like you to tell me the number of startups we have worldwide and in Brazil, how to draw the startups to small and large agri incorporations in terms around an agenda with focus in open innovation and measurable impact. Let's begin with the figure. I'm going to tell you the figures. When we talk about startups that want to adventure in agribusiness, throughout the world, we have approximately 18,000 startups. And of these 18,000, most of them, if not 90%, die because of lack of capital. Of these 18,000 startups, almost 13 of them from agribusiness is present here in Brazil. So then it comes in what was mentioned, lack of credit and the lack of incentives for these entrepreneurs that are usually few people, garage companies that are living the agribusiness, makes them not have success and grow in the following first millions. So these figures that I mentioned are companies that cannot reach their first million in terms of revenue. Most part of the startups are failing. And an important piece of information is that when we refer to startups, comes to our mind immediately technology. This is natural. And if we think in terms of technology, naturally it comes, we think about Silicon Valley, because that is where the main technology were and are being created daily. So probably everybody here has a Spotify, a Netflix, a Uber. So I don't know if you manage to use public transport, but many people use Uber. This is the fruit of the investment that was done in startups and good ideas. And it is improbable that at least 3 times a year I go to California, I do not find companies of the agribusiness in the Silicon Valley. There is a reason for that, because we are blessed of having 3 crops, an amazing climate, and producers that early adopted. They really want to have this kind of technology, but they lack capital. Silicon Valley only exists because of a simple reason: the concept and attempt and error, and a lot of capital. Every year, over 15 apps are launched in Silicon Valley because they try and make mistakes, try and error, try and error. So with a lot of money, it's easy to do this. Obviously, the United States has one crop throughout the year when we talk about agribusiness. If they try and make a mistake, they got to wait one whole year. There's no capital can bear this. And in Brazil, we have this opportunity. In the previous panel, I heard, I don't know who from ABAG mentioned that they want to be the leader in the sustainable agribusiness. We have this condition. We need capital for that. So to bring what Guilherme mentioned for this answer, I see that these links, considering them, it's very difficult to bring them up. I put a fourth one: startup, company, corporations, and what is the other one? Small producer, and I put teaching institutions. When we want to conquer a territory, we got to bring together parts. And agribusiness is very diverse. It's very difficult to find an entrepreneur from Faria Lima that has resources, being able to resolve a problem in the middle of Mato Grosso state. If we do not put the money close to the producer and the entrepreneur, we will probably not have the solutions that we need. Because why did I put the fourth point regarding teaching institution? Because great part of the innovations that are happening here in Brazil are small hubs located very close to production areas that has the producer as the early adopter. He opens the doors of the farm to receive the entrepreneur. You have a teaching institution that usually gives the talent that they have to the small institution, and you have a brilliant mind, which is the entrepreneur. If we talk about Brazil, these entrepreneurs are sufferers, so to say. And what is missing, what lacks, is the money. Then you have corporates, they go after investments, but this is the only way that I see that we can manage to potentialize the agribusiness in Brazil and bring together these 3 points. These regional hubs will be much more efficient than large corporations. Many of the times, we tend to imagine or suppose that large corporations solve big problems. This has changed continuously. Now, small companies resolve small problems at the speed that is necessary. You cannot wait a long time to make decisions and solve things in time. Large corporations have the speed that the world needs, and climate change is one of them. We do not have much time to wait. We got to give investment, technology, and public policies so that we can reach to a common ground. And the last point you brought was climate resilience. I'd like to summarize this in terms of climate resilience of the agribusiness does not happen in the lab. Climate resilience in the agribusiness doesn't happen in the lab. It happens when the entrepreneur finds opportunity inside a farmer's land, inside the producer, to solve a big problem. Then you can find climate resilience. Far from the operation and far from the field without dirtying the boots, you won't be able to have the large alternatives and solutions that we need. Thank you, Leo. Just considering a point here, considering the lack of resources, and also with respect to the Silicon Valley, with respect to attempt and error. We can't do that as much with the high interest rate that we have because nobody can bear it. We also need a civilized interest rate so for us to advance. Raquel? This is an important topic. Now, let's see how you're going to cover it. How can embedded technology and machinery data contribute to more precise and for more practical insurance and agricultural practices? We have LGPD here regarding the producers authorizing sending such information. Once again, we are always going back to this axis of the lack of registry. What happens inside the property if we do not have access to this? We cannot do much more than what is being done. But I'm going to hear from you how you see this point. Perfect, Guilherme. And before answering your question, it's important to understand what the issue is. When you talk about climate change, besides extreme events that we see, and this is indeed affecting the field, we see catastrophic events at a faster rate. Now, without considering these extreme events, let's just consider the increase in temperature. I read a piece of information that made me quite alarmed. Each 1 degree that we increase in temperature, it reduces the production of soybean in 6%, corn 8%. So just because of the increase in temperature, and with adding this, all the other events that we are facing. So this is indeed a challenge for the real producer and for the insurance companies as well that are taking on all these risks. Now, when we talk about technology and also the data of the machinery that has telemetrics, we help in several factors, not only with respect to data, but we increase productivity. That will help the producer to maintain themselves and maintain better results. Today, all the machinery, be them from Case and New Holland, 100% tractors that reach the field have telemetrics. This is valid for the small, medium, and large size producers. We had a huge amount of data collected, and how can we use this data the best way possible to assure this resilience? We have been working steadily, not only thinking on the resilience side, but also regarding mitigation. We have been crossing data now, and in order to manage the calculation of carbon emissions so that we can help the producer to see where he must have technology or differentiated technology to reduce emissions. So this is a set of things. Besides the aspect of data, if they're well used, it helps to increase productivity and give foundation for the insurance companies. It's important to talk about the resilience in per se. How can they lose less if temperature is rising and there's a lot of problems that we have to face? We already seen a lot of positive results in regenerative agriculture, and also we use precision agriculture through our machines and technology that we have that helps in this resilience. And it's interesting to say that many of the producers, they are quite reluctant to the use of such technologies, using regenerative agriculture. But many times during the first year, you cannot see a difference in productivity. You don't see a different result. Second year, you don't see that much. Maybe there is more expenditure. But during a bad and difficult year where climate change appear, in fact, you have a clear difference. The agriculture that use such practices and technology, they will have higher technology, higher production. And since the soil coverage and other technology that we have been using in the field makes this resilience help to reduce losses. And there is another point, the last one regarding technology is that the meteorologic data, because they help to prevent climate data. They help to prevent the losses and impacts, and also help in the case of a claim where we can be proved that that damage happened. So today we've been working with technologies like X Farm is an example. Sorry, farm extent is a technology that we use for monitoring, for agri-meteorological monitoring. It is through solar energies. It can be used anywhere in the field and will measure the microclimate so that you can have the amount of rain, the humidity in the soil. So from the farm and where it is located. So this helps to show what happened, what was the event, if indeed the area was affected, to support regarding the insurance coverage. I'm thinking of working together, but how can this information that is collected by telemetrics, how is it being used, or how can it be used? Because this is something you have to think about. How can we share this? I think this is a challenge so that we can have the insurance industry so that they can think in new products. How are you dealing with this inside the company? Well, currently, all this part of data, we have intelligence hubs and also the dealers, and where they have access to the machinery and all the data. There is the fact of legislation, of course, but the farmer agrees to supply this information, and we can monitor all this data in real time and bring insights for these farmers to make the best decisions. So this is in the company, and also it is with the agriculture. To use this data collectively, it would be excellent. This is a topic we must evolve to understand legally wise how we can use it, and it would give us a lot of subsidies for studies so that we can advance even more with respect to the resilient. This is a pathway to be tracked. And when you say that machinery today, irrespective of small, medium, large size farming areas, you can study the resilience with different extracts and try to quantify and show how it is reflected in terms of culture. We have access to information, and otherwise you cannot change this indicator to public policies and so on. We have to have these KPIs to know if actually things are indeed evolving. We already have a meeting scheduled after COP to discuss these aspects. Okay, here we have 15 minutes to go, so we would have time. There is time. Now, just for us to conclude, and I believe that for both of you, would like to talk about a topic that has not been covered or something you remember? This is, well, to conclude, I must emphasize the need of collaboration among all the entities. We said that nobody goes anywhere alone. So MAPFRE and the insurance sector is willing to have project together. Sharing of data, as we have been talking about, is a key factor for us to have more accuracy in what we do and interest in sharing this information regarding carbon emissions and bring an sustainable alternative to the producers. So we are available here, and I thank you once again for such a rich debate. Thank you. Once again, congratulations for your initiative of these products because we really need it for the native vegetation. Jairo? I'd like once again to thank ABAG, CNseg, FGB Agro at this moment. It was very unique for us. We talked a lot about technology. In the previous plenary, we also talked about the amount of area that is necessary to produce food to serve the world, which is equivalent to the state of Pará and the state of Minas Gerais together. Now, we also have recovery of degraded area that with technology, we can manage to supply at least part of this. So today in Syngenta, we have the Revet program with 300,000 hectares, where with this regenerative part, we can recover degraded area. We have been doing so, transforming them in productive area. With technology, this is possible, and we must bring together efforts so that we can make this delivery happen of food to the world. And one thing that I was thinking about while hearing all of you, we comment and criticize that the insurance market does not attend or serve the market demand. But if you consider MAPFRE, Alice, Luis here, actually, at the end of the day, we talked about the same group of insurers. Shouldn't we do a roadshow with these insurance company so for them to understand our market? I'm quite surprised indeed. We've been here for over an hour in insurance. We're talking about technology and solutions that are quite innovative. Isn't the reinsurance market, does it know how resilient we are? So I think it's worthwhile thinking about it. Shouldn't we have a roadshow with the reinsurers, apart from the ones that work with Brazil, and show this? This is food for thought. Great provocation. And once again, to do this roadshow, we need data, although if it is in an aggregated form, to show this. On behalf of MAPFRE, we make this invitation to be here with us discussing this. We have this commitment. Suchi? Murilo? Well, I'd like to thank and congratulate CNseg. What it did here in COP30, I regard quite historic and memorable. All this wealth in terms of discussions, I think we have a large legacy thanks to the mobilization of CNseg. ABAG, I participated in the Brazilian Congress last year for ABAG, and I see ABAG's positioning as well, and FGB Agro with Guilherme Bastos and Pedro Loyola, the way FGB Agro is positioning itself in the market and talking to several entities. I regard this very important for the development, both for credit and rural insurance in the country. And talking about Altsati, we work with state-of-the-art technology, but it's important to point out this technology has an accessible cost and brings very fast returns for those who invest in this technology. We are open for conversations with all insurance companies and financial institutions so that we can show that we can this return. And I believe technology and outside believes that it is essential to expand the adoption of rural insurance in the company. Thank you. Leo? Well, I'm going to leave a message of optimism, Guilherme, because this is what we need. Unfortunately, we're going through a large catastrophe. I've been working in the agro market since it wasn't sexy, tech, or pop. Today, agri is sex, tech, and pop, right? Everybody likes to talk about agri, but we're present in 15 countries, and the Brazilian producer is the one that is mostly concerned about sustainability, that take into account good practices. So every time we hear about agri-business, Brazilian agri-business, we must be proud because it is indeed responsible for two-thirds of our GDP. This is not news for anyone. That it is in evidence in this COP30. Thank God it became evident and clear. I've been part of 3, 4 COPs in the past, and it wasn't so much highlighted as it is today. I'd like to leave this takeaway message for you that inside the agribusiness, we are going through a new wave of technology, of modernization, and also even taking even more care of the environment. And Brazil is exporting good practices. Brazil is showing to the world how to do more sustainable agri-business. So every time we hear anyone talk about the agri-business, feel satisfied and pleased because this is fruit of the work of our producers, small, medium, and large family producers. Marcel? This is in line with what I have to say regarding the agribusiness. For those who have participated in other podcasts and is in the sustainability agenda, we preach to convert it. We talk about sustainability for those who already believe in it. But when you talk about sustainable agriculture, there are less people that have been converted. So we need more. So to advance in this agenda, we are on this pathway. And in fact, this has been a COP that I noted that we talked most about agriculture with an amazing Embrapa space. AgriZone is amazing. It is taking of what is the agribusiness in Brazil, in fact. And a second step for us to advance even more is to bring more agriculturalists and growers and farmers to this conversation, because I see that several links are taking part of this chain, but very few of farmers. We have to hear from those who are in the field. Instead of attacking them, we should bring them to the table so that they can show what they're doing on a daily basis. So I'm very hopeful, and also I believe that we have a gigantic opportunity in Brazil to advance with respect to food safety, reduction of emissions, and more resilience in the agribusiness. So let's go together and we will get there. Thank you very much. Um, Seguro and Agrizoni here in this COP30 made a whole lot of difference. Before we leave, I know you are freezing just a little bit more. Claudia, the director, will share her words. Thank you very much, Guilherme. Thank you very much for the ABAG partnership. Actually, all the partners, it is indeed very pleasant to be here, all the partnership that we did, and we saw this construction so that we could reach at COP. It's not over. We have another event in the morning, but for us here at CNseg, it was indeed a huge pride to work with you, the partners. We have gone a long way, and the CNseg teams with insurance teams, everybody worked very much so that we could get here as we are. So I'd like to congratulate everybody, but since we're talking about tools, Diogo already mentioned several things about the tools we had worked with to be launched. Now I'm going to briefly talk about the last tool that's got to do with the agri and insurance company. Since we're talking about agri business and insurance company, the central bank has created, and CNseg, we developed a tool for the social environmental aspect in the agribusiness. You're going to see the presentations. We have 3 slides. Obviously, I'm between you and the cocktail, but this was a tool that gave us a lot of work to devise and to prepare, but it comes to contribute so that we can have a more responsible subscription. The banks have been working, the banks and insurance company have been working a long time with this. We have a database and we brought this together with AI and everything so that we can have a supply to tool to supply to give to the insurance companies. It is a critical sector. Tool is also critical. The agribusiness critical. Tools are critical for the agribusiness. And for us to have a responsible subscription, we have to have tools.
I'll go over it very quickly. So there are a lot of databases which are, well, first, let me talk about what we're calling the Climate Intelligence Hub. Why climate intelligence? Because we are just starting building something. We have delivered a lot of things to copy. The first was the climate event radar. They were talked about before, which gives us data in order to show the protection gap that Brazil has right now and how much we still need to work in order to have a better protected economy. We had the climate risks tool, which is available in our website. If you want to look at it, if you want to test it out during this trial period, that's first dealing with floods, but then we'll add more things to it like drought, heat waves, and it will be a tool that can be used by insurers and it standardizes the data. We are using many different data sets and using AI to compile a lot of things, and CNseg is more and more trying to improve that tool. We have started with flood, but then I said next year we'll work with heat waves too. And the third one that we're launching right now that is directly connected to this panel and the previous one is the social and environmental compliance tool for rural insurance. And what does this tool do? Well, basically, it checks a lot of databases, is in line with the new regulation that SUSEP released the public call, and now we had the regulation for it. And our tool already works with what was before the public call and will already work with the new regulation, the new rules. So it's important that we are already ready, even though there's still 180 days to implement the new regulation. This new launch will work in 3 different ways. I'll very quickly touch on them. First, we'll consult 11 databases. We're checking for quilombola areas, slavery labor, different type of data that we have that sometimes the insurers check separately. So this will help the insurers to check only one place for it. Second, in March of 2026, we'll have something in Ingra, forest fires, and different type of data that will be available at CSP in the regulation that just released in the November 4th. And the third one will have INCRA, settlers, protection areas, environmental protection areas, the use of the soil, biodiversity from IBAMA and CNBio. So it's a tool that goes beyond simply the regulation. It will give a tool for insurers to work with their customers to foster best practices. And with that, we have this new tool, this new social environmental tool. So we're definitely very happy to share this with all of you. It was an intense work that was done with the product area from CNseg. Unfortunately, Vasco is not here, but we worked very closely to his team, my team, talking with insurers. So we are very happy to launch this new tool to give even more data for the insurance to make our agribusiness more and more sustainable. With the penetration power that the financial has, the insurance will have more and more. Basically, that's it. I won't keep you waiting for your cocktail. But then again, I'm really happy for the partnership that we have with Abagio, FGV. Guilherme has said it before that House of Insurance was really important for all the different discussions that we had to show that the insurance sector is extremely important link in this chain in order for us to reach the climate transition in the country sustainably and also with social environmental responsibility. Thank you so much.
Agora podemos sair.
Muito obrigada a todos os
So
participantes.
thank you all for all the speakers.
Também quero agradecer novamente aos nossos empoderadores.
I would like to thank all the Empowers, Allianz, AXA, BB Seguros, Bradesco, Caixa Seguridade, Mafre, Marsh McLennan, Porto, Prudential, and Tokyo Marine. Once again, all the panels will be available in our YouTube channel. Now, I'd like to invite all of you for our cocktail. Have a great evening.